Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My standard procedure. I am requesting all cell phone electronic devices be turned off or in a mute position. Not disturb the meeting. Any member of the public also has a right to make an audio or video recording of an open session of a public meeting. A member of the public who wishes to record a meeting must first notify the chair and must comply with reasonable requirements regarding audio or video equipment established by the chair so as not to interfere with the meeting. The chair is required to inform other attendees of such recording at the beginning of the meeting. We call the Town of Wareham Workshop meeting of the Board of Selectmen, School Commission, and Westfield Study to order. You're going to need a clerk?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I move to make Selectman Begley clerk. I move to nullify our previous vote to make Selectman Begley the chairman pro tempore.
Okay. Motion made. I think it's second, and Steve is now the official clerk, as usual. And Mr. Sanborn has just entered with the work study.
Mr. Chairman, and I'll ask Peter to blend in if I could on this. This was pursuant to the Board of Selectmen's request to jointly meet with the Westfield Study Committee. You all should have a copy of the town meeting article, and we have copies of the the recently sent out RFP. And Peter and I and staff have been working to get some feedback and get this meeting arranged so that we can talk about not only the RFP but the article and perhaps the best direction to go forward. And Mr. Sanborn, would you like to comment on, or maybe you could just pull your chair up a little bit and join us? Just have to bring the mic a little bit closer, Peter, so that they're just the recording.
Appearing before you, I think, 2 times ago that I appeared before you when we discussed this. At that point in time, I think I was here requesting an extension on the RFP due date. And I reported then on some of the feedback that we had gotten from both some of the firms, some of the developers that had submitted proposals back in 2009, as well as some other parties that we had contacted who were on the distribution list for what was then the current RFP. And I think, and I shared some of those with you. I think some of the board members may have had some questions as to the basis of those, but I think there are several issues I think that were brought to our attention, really concerning what they felt was the feasibility of developing the property there. Some of them, I guess one was that the requirement by the town meeting vote of maintaining the athletic fields, improving and maintaining the athletic fields, I believe is what the town meeting vote may have said, for the duration of the lease. They saw that as a financial burden. I think that's probably well, I think that and one other item is central to what the town meeting article said, and the others, the other one is, well, two items, but they're placed together here. One is the number of units in total that the um, town was looking for, although I guess that wasn't stipulated in the town meeting article. And the other was the exclusivity of having it as affordable elderly housing. We had some feedback suggesting, this is just not competitive in today's market, given how you want to finance this to do or it's going to take a long time waiting in line for certain financing tools if this is an exclusively elderly project and exclusively affordable. So there were some stated and some implicit comments by developers that, this could be a not exclusively an elderly housing development, meaning it would have a mix of unrestricted and restricted units in it, or that it would be not exclusively affordable housing. Those are the two central things, I think, to the town meeting article itself. There are other comments that we received back from developers.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
before we get into the other comments that might have been received back from the developers, I think that those three are central, and I also think that the issue of the recategorization of the potential use of CPC funds for the water and sewer connections to go to the property was also, from my standpoint and the feedback that I've gotten through those that I've reached out to, is also integral to the piece, because I think that that's kind of a carrot for the developers coming in. I know it seems kind of like semantics, because if we're going to make a CPC contribution, whether it be a general contribution to the project or whether it's designated, it's still a contribution. But I'd kind of like to look at the issue first, the last issue that you talked about, which was that the developers expressed a disinterest because the RFP called for the property to be exclusive senior affordable housing. That is contradictory to the 5 proposals that we received previously. And I'm wondering if any of the feedback that you received was from those 5 developers on that specific issue, because every single one of those units that was in those previous RFPs were deemed affordable senior housing. They were, we had a 55+ age requirement, and they were all they all fell into the category of at least falling below 80% of median income for rent, paying 80% of median income for rent, which for a single person is around $45,000 a year. So I think it's important for us to know whether how many of those, how many of the comments that you received back were specific to that issue. And I'm not asking you for the names. I'm just asking if any of the 5 proposed proposals that we received previously included that comment.
Unfortunately, I don't have all the notes, and Susan Green also helped out on this some. So, but I know of at least one of those 5 that expressed that concern, and I think that what they were saying was that with what occurred. I know these proposals came in at 2009, but I don't think all the chips had fallen that time in terms of the economy and the financing, and so they're really saying we're in a new era here in terms of a financing scenario from when this was put out before. So and frankly, I took that at face value. I wasn't going to challenge them to quiz them as to.
Right, I understand it, and I guess. There's actually two things that occurred that I could see personally potentially having an impact on that, and that is, yes, there is additional competition for those both federal and state tax dollars and tax credits particularly on the subsidy, direct subsidy side. We increased the project, or the potential to increase the project, the number of units substantially.
Right.
And I can see the impact of trying to make, you know, a 250 unit or 280 unit development, trying to obtain the subsidy and make them all affordable units. That does kind of start to go off the scale as far as, you know, being a feasible project, in my opinion.
Right, and maybe the RFP in retrospect should have emphasized more the town's willingness to see this as a phased development over a whatever length of time needed to do, because, you know, the feedback was basically, if you're looking at low-income housing tax credit awards, those, in most cases, those are being awarded at 60 units tops at any given time, given the shrinking amount that are available.
I agree with that. And on the federal subsidy side, for programs such as the 202, those are usually limited to phases of about 48 to 50 units.
Right.
And, you know, in my experience, once you get to be above, you know, a development of, you know, 100, that maxes out at about 150, maybe to 175 units, in my opinion, and, you know, that's the difference between a development and a project. And those were some of the concerns I had expressed previous to being a member of this board, but I did attend a number of the meetings, and I was allowed to offer some input, and I appreciate that from the Westfield Committee. But I think, you know, when we put restrictions on an RFP that, you know, are essentially saying we're trying to put such a large project together, I do understand the concern from the developers. And I think that the more leeway they have, the more creative they can be, particularly with the financing sources, because as we both know, there are a number of different financing sources, not just project-based 202 and not just affordable housing tax credits, LIHTC.
Right.
So, you know, I think whatever we can do in an RFP that opens up that that field for them to look at, you know, a range of different financing sources, you know, there's a possibility of combining. You know, we could have 48 units of tax credit. We could have 48 units of Section 202. We could have 48 units that are tenant rental assistance that's assigned to the tenant. I think the key and the intent of the town meeting article was that we provide as much affordable housing as we possibly can for seniors, with the definition being 55 years and older. So, you know, I think reworking the RFP on that end would help tremendously, and I don't know what your opinion is on that, and I don't.
Mr. Chairman, in regards to what Mr. Schneider was just saying, under Section 10, item F, we did, in order to secure funding or to verify market demand, the developer may construct in phases, the project in phases. If a phase construction schedule is proposed, the schedule of the phases should be included in the proposal. This schedule is subject to the approval of the Board of Selectmen. And so I'm not so sure that the issue, I don't understand, if we offered that to the developers, Peter, why is that an issue?
I don't know that it is, my point
It
was,
wasn't
my
that
point, I know what was in there, and that wasn't my point. My point was, you know, in hindsight, maybe it should have been stressed more, you know, somehow highlighted more or something about it. I mean, it's a pretty extensive. I think the developers who were reading that probably were pretty competent, but you know, there's certain things certain things are more important to communicate than others, and it may not have jumped out sufficiently. I
Yeah,
don't
and
know
I just
if
want
that's
to
the
point
case.
that out to people that are going to see this, for the record, that this board in this RFP did offer these contractors the opportunity, based on money they could get, based on finances, based on scheduling, based on demand, that they could do this in phases. So they could have easily done 50 now, wait till they got that filled, as long as the Board of Selectmen approved that, and then built another 50 and fill that up. We did give them that opportunity.
No, and I do agree with that, Steve. I think the issue comes in with the total number of units, and, you know, I'm sorry, through you, Mr. Chairman, to Selectman Holmes. I think that that's the issue, Steve. You know, and as we add, you know, additional layers of subsidy or financing sources, it you know, the development becomes more complicated.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Hill.
So while we're on that point, maybe we should just take this, since Peter brought it up and you brought it up. All right, so if we look at item F, what do we do to, why don't we just talk about what we do to make that more palatable and write it up, instead of just going on to something else, and then we at least get that piece done? What do you think? Think that's a good way to proceed?
I think so.
Mr. Chairman?
Well, as you know, it does say phases. These are contractors that is out there. This is their business, and this is what they do for a living. They know how to approach it, and they know how to go about it. We can propose or suggest anything. When they look at it, they have to look at what is feasible for them as a contractor and for the town to make money. And if they look at it with the times that we are in now, the economy is so low. For them to do 280 units, even if it's 50 units, you know, you're doing 5 phases. And whatever you do, the upfront cost is there from the beginning, whether you do 50 or the 200. So it's there, it's written in black and white. They looked at it, they analyzed it, and they came back whatever committee comment that they had to make. And it's good if we want to go back and see if you can change it, but it's there already. They have the option to do the phases. Then it's up to us to say, okay, yeah, we can do the phases. But then it's up to us to say, well, how long is the phase going to be? Is it going to be 10 years, 15 years? According to the economy, so, go ahead. Mrs. Winslow?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple things. First, this is the second time now that we've invited these potential developers to come and meet with us and have an open forum to discuss these issues, and twice now no one showed up. And I personally find that disturbing, because if you read the news, you know, we all hear about how these people are starving to death and, you know, can't survive. And here we, the town is offering, and perhaps it's not a perfect project as it's laid out in the RFP, but here we have invited them to come to us and tell us how we can make this work for them, and they don't come. And I find that to be very disappointing, first off. Secondly, where Mr. Holmes had asked a couple weeks ago whether we're talking about Westfield or whether we're talking about senior affordable housing. When this article was brought before town meeting, there were several things that were brought up about this project. And one of the items that was stressed, and it's unfortunate that nobody amended the article to put it in there, one of the things that was brought up over and over and over again was that this would solve our 40B problem. When the Westfield Study Committee came before us and we talked about these number of units, we talked about how many it would realistically take to solve the 40B problem. In my mind, it makes absolutely no sense for the town to commit CPC, which is tax money. We all pay that money. It's not free. We're paying for it. And then the state kicks in a small amount, which is also our tax dollars, to build a project for the sake of building it. And from my perspective, I'd like us to have a conversation about how we can solve the senior affordable housing problem in Wareham, because Westfield is not the only solution. And the longer we focus on this one thing, we're not getting anything done. We're going nowhere. It's obvious that a 250, 300 unit project isn't feasible. We all get that. So maybe it's a 100 unit project out there. Where are the rest of the units going to be? If the list today is 100 people, that list is only going to grow exponentially over the years as our population ages. And you have a number of people after this economic crisis who are never going to recoup their retirement losses before they retire, who never planned to be in a situation that now they're going to find themselves in. We need to look at that. We need to look out 10, 15, 20 years and figure out what the need in our community is going to be and how we're going to address it. And that's all I have to say, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mrs. Begley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 40B is not in this article, and unfortunately, it is in the RFP and is addressed in the RFP. Now, the original RFP that went out that had 5 responses, what I'm not sure about is why the RFP that went out subsequent to this particular article didn't just address the two issues contained in the article, and then the original RFP with these 2 issues in the RFP. Now, I was very concerned when I saw this RFP and saw the language for the recreational fields, because that's not what's contained in the article. What's contained in the article is initially rehabilitating the recreational facilities and maintaining the recreational facilities during the term of the lease. It says nothing about this elaborate reconstruction. The other thing that's in there is the fact that it's senior, that we want it restricted to senior. Those are the only 2 changes that really need to be made. All the language about the 40B, or there's no number of units here. I can't really recall what number of units went out in the original RFP. Do you remember, Mr. Schneider?
I believe it was the cap, the maximum.
175 to 200.
For the original?
Yes.
When we had 5 responses.
That's my notes.
150.
150 to 200?
150 to 200.
So 150 to 175, so that went up to 280. 40B language was added. Elaborate language for recreational fields was added. And what was absent was the issue of the water and sewer that Selectman Schneider brought up. So it became, by far, it was a wish list. It was what any of us would do with negotiating any kind of contract. It would be the absolute, this is the absolute that we want. And it did differ pretty significantly from the original RFP. So I don't think that this project is dead in the water in any way, shape, or form. I think that this RFP should have been the original one with just the language that changed in the article for the RFP. That should have been it. I think just far too much went out there.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Stewart.
You know, I think I want to be clear that, you know, the Board of Selectmen isn't being critical at all of the Westfield Study Committee. I think that you folks did exactly the job that you should have. I think that you wanted to try and get as much as you possibly could for the town. I think that, sure, there were, you know, we all want to solve the 40B issue. And I think that the 40B issue was addressed at town meeting, and it was debated. And I think that the issue of senior affordable housing itself was addressed and debated. I also think that a substantial portion of those 5 RFPs that came in previously that would have provided senior affordable housing were debated at town meeting. And I think what really the intent of town meeting at that point was that town meeting decided 3 things really. Town meeting decided that they wanted to have a multiple use for the Westfield site, which we wanted to rehabilitate the existing fields, which were already there. I think that we also, the primary focus of this, the article though, was to provide senior affordable housing up at Westfield. And from my standpoint, you know, the three concerns were affordable senior rental housing, rehabilitation of the fields, and to be sure that all of the housing, the units up there were affordable, deemed affordable and for seniors. So anything beyond that is you know, kind of a bonus to the town. And I'm just saying at this point, you know, we had the 5 proposals that basically addressed all the elements. We didn't meet the 40B requirement, you know, for units, but we did meet the senior affordable housing requirement. The only thing, in my view, that's left to address in an RFP to get the housing built up there, and a substantial number of units, is the rehabilitation of the recreational fields, not reconstruction or not new construction, but the rehabilitation of the existing fields. The intent of town meeting article was not to meet 40B. So, and Selectman Winslow, I think, you know, you just stated that, you know, you'd like to see at least 100 units or something to that effect, you know, and I'm not saying at Westfield site, but, you know, you want to solve the affordable housing issue. Well, 100 units goes a long way in solving the senior affordable housing issue in Wareham. As I understand it, we have over 200 people on the waiting list for the Wareham Housing Authority.
Mr. Schneider, just to clarify, Mr. Chair, if I may,
Okay,
what I'm saying is that it's my feeling that we're so focused on this one project that we're not looking at the problem as a whole. And if 200 units of housing isn't feasible out at Westfield and 50 to 100 is feasible out at Westfield, where are the rest of them going to go? And why aren't we having a conversation about an overall plan to address the problem for the community? We've become, it's almost like we have tunnel vision, and we're just too focused on this one thing. And I think what's crystal clear to me from the 5 original proposals and from the feedback that we got from this latest RFP and from the fact that nobody is sitting here this morning to have a conversation with us when we clearly, I mean, I know we all had other things to do today. I canceled a trip with my daughter for the day, but why aren't they here talking to us? But I want to solve the problem as a whole, and we're not going to solve the problem for the seniors. If the list today, and I think that what the director said at town meeting was there was a little over 100 names on the list today, that number is only going to grow as time goes on. And we need to really look at what that number is going to be 20 years from now, because it doesn't make sense to solve today's problem if 10 years from now we're just going to be faced with the same one. And maybe that's where the phasing comes in, or maybe that's where I want to have a real conversation about how to solve the problem of senior affordable housing in Wareham, or just senior housing. There's a number of people who are never going to qualify for affordable housing in Wareham, who are no longer not going to be able to keep their homes forever, and where are they going to go? There's really nowhere here for them to go. So I think to me, the issue isn't about a specific site to develop. The issue is about a problem that the community faces. But we just keep talking about this one site, and I want to talk about the problem as a whole and how we can try and fix it. And I realize it's not an overnight fix, and it's not going to be fixed with one RFP, and it's not going to be fixed with one development site. But how are we going to fix it? What's our goal 5 years from now? Where do we want to be in this 10 years from now? We don't have any of that, and that's the conversation I would like to have with my colleagues on the board, with the Westfield Study Committee, with the CETA director, and with the community as a whole, so that we can really start to make some headway on this problem.
well, I'm going to inject something right now, and Mr. Holmes brought it up. There was terms and conditions. Contractors that were sent out to all the contractors, they looked at it. They could have came back to us with a proposal, and they didn't. So to me, that's the blank saying they're not doing it, it's not feasible, we do have contractors in town that are building affordable housing now. They're having problem leasing. You go around, you see these new buildings that have been built up, and there's signs on there from Marion to Wareham, they're vacant. So there's a problem with the economy. They didn't come back and tell us, well, we'll do it if, or let's do it this way. They read the contract just like we read the contract. That's their business. So we went out, we had the Westfield study it. If they proposed a 200, they could have came back with, like you said, in phases, 50 or 60. I don't think that would have been a problem. But where do we go from here? We're talking about Westfield now, not anything else but Westfield. So we need to solve this problem. You know, Mr. Holmes, Mr. Benjamin.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'll tell you, that was quite an alarming comment by Mr. Schneider a few minutes ago, because I can tell you that I spent many hours last year on the phone with my former colleagues. And one of the reasons that I supported, and I didn't support this in the beginning, I don't think there's very many secrets about that, and I'm still not a great fan of Westfield, because the guys I know in this business aren't doing Westfields. I've said that here many times. But what is this 40B issue? I was told many, many times in arguments that this project would solve our 40B problem and get us away from these swindler developers who can come in here and so I'm disappointed to hear that. If that's the case, that's not a negative comment. I'm saying I'm disappointed. That's not negative. Sorry. I'm talking about developers. I'm sorry. I think the proper term is they can shortcut the existing zoning laws to do development. I'm sorry. Hostile, I think, is what they call them. 40B developers. And so I'm disappointed to hear that, because one of the main reasons I supported this was so that we could clear that hurdle. And I think at our last meeting that we had with you all, Bruce had talked about it as well, that this would solve our 40B problem. So I'm hoping that if we can get this thing off the ground and get someone to work with us on this, that we can solve that problem, so that we don't have developments popping up around town.
Mr. Chairman?
It's my understanding that 10% 40B is not fixed, that the state can raise it at any time. So answering a 10% 40B may not solve our problem if the state raises it to 11%. It isn't a fixed number, it will keep changing on us. I just wanted to make that.
Yeah,
I just wanted to
I
make
understand
that
that,
statement.
Sandy.
And-
Yeah.
But that was one of the selling points of this project, was to achieve, and I'm going back to when the gentleman was working with us, I forget his name. Who was the gentleman who worked with us on the first piece of this? Heaton, right. And that was one of the issues that he had said, that we could get to that threshold at the time. I understand it's a moving target, but if you get there and they move it a little bit, you can. But if you're always way behind the curve, I mean, you're always fighting these other developers.
And the comment you made, 40B, you'll never get rid of it. You can build 200 houses. The whole 200 houses are not going to Wareham residents that are here now. They'll probably be coming in. So you increase your population, and as it does, you still have the 10%. So that's a fallacy to say it is. The only reason is not in my backyard, putting it way out there because someone doesn't want it close to home. We have other property in Wareham that has sewer already that we can connect to, that developers can go into. We had Union Pond that a developer went into. We went Main Street, they provided their own. It's not costing the town anything. We're not investing anything. We're getting the repercussions, or not the repercussions, but the benefits from the taxes from it without outlaying. With this one, we got to outlay $500,000. We have to put the sewer in. And if you look at our laws, if you run sewer down any street, people on each side, we can tell them they need to hook up. And that'll be a problem.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Begley?
I'm well aware that you've not supported this project, and I appreciate the fact that you've been candid about those reasons. However, this town meeting article charges the Board of Selectmen to pursue this project. So that's something that we do have, you may not support it, you may not think that you want to go down that road, but the Board of Selectmen is charged to pursue this project. In the language of the article? What do you mean, what does that mean?
Go ahead, ma'am.
So,
Right, that's what we need.
clarify what? What does what mean?
Does that mean, are you saying that the Board of Selectmen have to build Westfield regardless of how much it costs?
No, I'm not saying that, Mr. Holmes. What I'm saying is that no, I'm saying that those were Mr. Cruz's opinions. I'm not saying that I agree with those opinions. I'm saying that Mr. Cruz expressed those opinions. And I appreciate the fact that he did that, and I don't agree with them. So, to clarify, I would like to see the original RFP go out with the items contained in this article added, without the massive increase in numbers, etc. So if the original RFP said 100 to 175 units, if we can add, and adding language of the senior affordable housing, and adding the language of the initial rehabilitation of the fields, and have it go out again. That is my personal opinion. I do have a correspondence from Mr. Savageau, who's out of the country for the month. And he requested that a letter, so that he could also have an opinion, a letter be read into the record, and that this be attached to the minutes. So
Okay,
if I might.
before you go any further, I want to comment on the comment you made earlier. It says, the town authorized the Board of Selectmen, based on a recommendation duly appointed RFP review committee. We had the committee. This is not the first committee, this is the second committee. We've had two committees do an RFP. They've changed it, I don't know how many, multiple times. Selectmen were involved in the committee. Past and present selectmen were involved. They try to get it as good as they can, feasible
Okay,
as they
Mr.
can
Chairman?
to make it work.
Excuse me, Mr.
Excuse
Chairman.
me, I have the floor. Right. Thank you. Okay. And all we have the review committee that's doing it what we have now to study. They've done the study, they put the RFP out, it's been out. We haven't gotten any, we only got one response from the first one, 5. Whatever reason, it went down. Now we haven't got any response at all. We've put it out, the selectmen have supported it. Whether we agree or don't agree on it, we're doing according to the regulations this year in the RFP. It's put in there the ball fields. You can rehash the ball field any way you want. It says rehabilitation recreation. So it all depends what you call rehabilitation on the ball field. Is it brand new? Is it? All the contractors are not going.
It doesn't say construct a ball field, Mr. Cruz. It says rehabilitation.
Right. And rehabilitation can be anything from one plot to a brand new field. When you rehabilitate, you bring something back.
I understand that. I understand that, Mr. Chair, but what I'm saying is that the Westfield Study Group absolutely did a great deal of work. I am not negating that whatsoever. But what I'm saying is that they're an advisory group, they're a study group, they bring it to the Board of Selectmen. Ultimately, it's the Board of Selectmen that puts out the RFP, not the Westfield Study Group.
And the RFP did go out.
But
The board did put the RFP out.
but you're
It
missing
went
my
out as
point.
per- It went out as per the bylaws.
Right, but you're missing my point, Mr. Cruz. What I'm saying is that if we didn't get a response from the RFP, this board can certainly send out a different RFP or have a conversation with the Westfield Study Group to come to some sort of compromise or or direction from this board as a whole as to if we were to put out the RFP again, the changes that would include.
Right, and this is what I'm getting at now. We put it out twice. We're gonna keep putting it up. And how many times are we gonna change it? We need to have the contractors come and let us know what's the feasible way to do it.
But I think by looking at the 5 prior RFPs that did come back, the developers that came back with a positive response, we need to look at, that's my point, Mr. Cruz, is to look at those, what made them successful, and just add the additional language contained in the article.
And that is the point. We put it out, we had 5. We had people that were interested. Now we went from 150 to 280. That's the point. Right, doubling project. So we didn't even learn from the first one. We should have went with the first one and then continue from there.
Mr. Chairman,
That's Mr. Snyder.
that's exactly my point that I'm trying to make. You know, if we brought the RFP back around to what the initial conditions were, or what the initial requests were, and we just add the recreational component, put it back out to bid, and see what happens. But I do want to address a couple of things. I don't think that any member of this board sat on the Westfield Study Committee. So, did you sit on the Westfield Study Committee? I don't think that any member of this board sat on the Westfield Study Committee. This
Sat
current
on-
board.
No, you went to meetings, you haven't sat on.
I think that
Sat on it.
Chairman.
No,
Right, and so I just wanted to clarify that.
right. In other words,
so-
we didn't sit on it, but we attended and they had input. And we had ex-selectmen on the board also.
Every month, we had joint meetings with the Board of Selectmen.
Right,
And Bruce was in here every week giving you updates.
right.
So,
Right, but it's just to be for clarity's sake, no one on this board sat on the Westfield Study Committee, as was stated. And I also want to just address the issue of, why the focus on Westfield. We drafted nearly 10 years ago, I believe, Sandy, if you could, maybe help on this one, an affordable housing plan for the town of Wareham, which specifically, called for public-private partnerships and development of affordable housing on town-owned land. That's why there's been the focus on Westfield. I think, and I think that Westfield is consistent with the affordable housing plan that was written. We're in the process of the Affordable Housing Trust is in the process of requesting an RFP to update that plan. But Westfield has been a work in progress as a result of that plan. It was determined, by the previous Board of Selectmen that fit within the confines of the plan in existence at the time. So, I think that that's important to note. It's not, I want to solve the affordable housing problem in Wareham as well. And we also want to solve the issue of unfriendly 40Bs coming to the town. Westfield is a 100% friendly 40B. Unfriendly. Westfield is a friendly 40B. I don't think that anyone could ever, and it's possible someone stated that it would solve 40B, but I certainly went into this knowing that 40B is a moving number. And as more development and more unfriendly 40Bs come to the town, we actually fall behind in reaching the goal of, trying to get to the 10% affordable housing in the town. Whether, and I'm not saying that, whether building 50 units, I'm not saying that building 50 units up at Westfield would be something that would be acceptable to me, but it would be 50 units that would go towards, every one of those units would go towards counting against our 10%. And again, I think that, as Selectman Begley stated, the issue here is, we're trying to comply with the intent and wishes of the town meeting vote, which is contained in this article. No one said that we would fulfill the 40B requirement in this vote, which is what we as the Board of Selectmen are trying to implement, is the will of town meeting. And I think we all, sitting here right now, recognize that the maximum number of units that we're asking for, 280, is making the project unfeasible. So let's put it back out there. Let's maybe not put a number out there, and let's see what they come back at. Maybe they're going to come back with 270. I don't know. But why don't we put it out there? Let's leave it blank.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Well, you know, this is all,
Sorry.
this is all great. Discussion is wonderful, but, you know, it is sad, and I like to actually get something accomplished. So, I mentioned it before, and I'll mention it again. Now, we just had a nice conversation about the number of units. So I'm looking at page 3 of this RFP, and I highlighted it and put down the number 150, because if we don't make these changes, this is just going to keep going on and on and on and on and on. So I'm thinking, okay, we're talking about the number of units. Let's go to the RFP and fix that paragraph. If we could do that, and then when we're done talking, we have the issue, and we have something we can just finalize and put back out. I thought that's why we were here today, right? This is not, am I off base? Because if I am,
No,
please tell me.
no, you're right, but
I'm just trying to get this done. So if I look at invitation to bid, it says the Board of Selectmen seeks proposals for 175 affordable senior units. Is that correct? Mrs. Bagley, I think I just asked you what the correct original number was.
I'm looking. I have to.
So what I'm saying is, as we're talking about it, let's go to that page and change that. I've highlighted it and changed it, and then we can have it retyped up. We can review it, put it back out.
Works for me, Steve.
Okay, what page is that, please? Let me go to page 6. Thank you. Let me highlight that and change that to a minimum of 150 only. No max, just set it minimum 150.
Mr. Chair.
excuse me, before we go, I think Mr. Mulkern.
Yes, I just want to clarify. I sat in another town where we did exceed 10%. I just want to explain to you. The town of Wareham will never stay at 10% because every time you build a new house to change the figures. I told that to the members, but we did go with the thing, a minimum. So don't try to ever reach 10%. You never will. And we learned that when I was in the town of Pembroke. And just getting back to the phasing part, the phasing as a contractor myself, and I worked for different developers in Boston doing a lot of these 40Bs for years. The phasing, I think, in my opinion, looking out there now with the economy, is it has to be done in phasing because there's no way someone's going to come in and do 280 units because it's going to take a long time. Phasing, what they do is they wait, they build a building, they fill it up with so many people, then they say, okay, now we have enough money to go on to the next phase, which is going to take a long time because like the economy right now is terrible, as we all know. And let me get, while I got the mic here, as far as the ball fields go, when I sat on the committee, I'm new in town, so I didn't know what happened 10 years ago. The ball fields, we were not only talking about bringing up the existing ones, but when they put in this new ball field, I said to myself, sitting on them as a member, as a developer or any of that, I don't think I'd ever get involved with it because most of these contractors don't know the first thing about building ball fields. So I think that's a good idea to get rid of that thing and just go back, maybe fix the existing ball fields, which don't look like they ever maintained before. And then the other problem is we did drop that $300,000 was put in the previous RFP for sewerage and water, which is a big thing because it's a very expensive proposition to get the sewage all the way back down to Route 28, and the water has to be done the same way from a great distance away. So pulling that $300,000 out might have had the contractors back off because that's a big process too. So that's all I have to say.
Mr. Chairman, could you
Wait,
just...
excuse
one
me.
more-
Wait
could
up.
you just
Yeah.
finish one more thing?
Yeah,
When
I
you
want him-
talked about...
Are you finished, Mr. Mulkern?
Unless Mr.
I just wanted to
Bolton.
expand on one thing, Mr. Buckland. When you talked about construction in phases, which we talked about earlier, when you read this on page 11, It's a very short statement. Peter talked about maybe embellishing that a little bit. How would you embellish that as a contractor? What would you, in other words, if you're reading paragraph F on construction in phases,
What page are we on?
it's on page 11.
Page 11?
Yeah, it's under terms and conditions, Article 10, Section F. I'm assuming we all have the same photocopies. Page 11, F.
Could I make a suggestion? That this RFP might, there might be at the very beginning, sort of a bulleted highlight of the essential elements or essential things, that before you get into all of the detail, which, you know, if somebody's serious about this, they're gonna study it. But
Right.
as someone who responds to proposals, sometimes you can miss things. So you could just start right out, you know, these are the essential elements that are, you'll find described in more detail later in the RFP.
Right.
So it's almost like an executive summary or something at the beginning.
I think you can see it should be included in the proposal.
No, it is there.
Yes, I know, that's what I'm saying, I think that's,
Is there something as a construction person, right?
well, I think Fred,
Reading that, is there something
I wasn't a
prefer to
contractor,
see
like,
that?
I work for contractors, but
Right.
for Fred up there, he's a contractor out there, and I'm sure he could give you a better idea of how he would approach the situation, you know, if he was bidding
Yeah, I
on
think
it.
Sandy had her hand up first. Did you have her? You want to grant a date?
We talked about some things that might have caused a problem, and I heard Joe mention 300,000 for the RFP.
Mr.
I'd
Chairman,
like to-
if I could, just 1 second, please. Can we just finish one line of thought? I understand Sandy had her hand up. Can we just, instead of bouncing around, can we just finish talking about
Do you have
The
any
phase.
other
construction in
phase?
phases?
Okay.
And then we can bounce back. I'm not
I
trying to.
just,
Because if we listen to everybody, it may be relevant when we get to.
I would
Okay,
agree.
go ahead, Dave.
I'd like to just go back to the opening comment that Mr. Sanborn made relative to the economy. And the economy is very different now than it was when we initially sat down to start talking about this. I think that's a very correct statement. Perhaps it might, in terms of phasing, perhaps it might be in the best interest of the town of Wareham to label the Westfield project as Phase 1. The proposal itself to label it as a Phase 1 of continued phases that may occur over years. This might begin to generate some interest by developers in terms of, okay, it's a smaller project. We can decide on the size of the project, the number of units and so forth in a phase. But if we address it as a Phase 1 project, or Phase 1 of a project, I think you might start to generate some interest from people that are out there who are in this business. And it's what I'm seeing at this point is, in being in the construction business, what I'm seeing at this point is that money is not certainly as fluid as it used to be. Developers, contractors seem to be building smaller projects instead of larger projects right now. You know, we've talked on the order of 50 to 60 units. Is this a sweet spot that might fit into somebody's wheelhouse in terms of what they feel might be a project they could make money on? Because at the end of the day, the bottom line is, what's their bottom line? It's not what they do for Wareham, but what's their bottom line, and that's what determines a project for them. Certainly, the inclusion of the fields has been a sore spot, and as somebody said, wish list add-ons, whatever, you know, that certainly makes some sense. But I think if we can start to hone in on a phase of an overall project and start to hone in on a number that makes sense financially to a developer, then I think we're going to go a long way to developing some interest in terms of getting an RFP out there and having people respond to it.
Mr. Cruz, may I ask Mr. Nielsen a question
Yeah, I
about
wanna-
this very
I want Mr.
phase?
Slavin to finish. Go ahead.
I will start, let's finish the phase discussion, then I have an issue on sewer and the CPC.
Mr. Begley?
Mr. Nielsen, as someone that's in the industry, if I like that idea of saying Phase 1, but would we do something? I mean, we have to start somewhere for sure. I mean, people, they're languishing on this list, and there are many who may not live to see this project to fruition. So I like the idea of Phase 1, and if you're thinking that from your area of expertise. If 50 were more reasonable, but we would like to see 100, could we say phase 1 and 2 and say, and phase it at 50? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do understand what you're saying. You want to pick a number. We have a number that we had determined, 275, 80 units at some point. Maybe that's the number that we'd like to see as a town in the overall, but maybe that's a 6-phase
I understand.
project. Maybe it's a 7-phase, maybe it's an 8-phase, who knows? That has to be determined. I think if we start someplace with a phase and develop a language that surrounds that,
Right.
that would be compatible with the interests of a developer. Again, let's remember, his bottom line is what's critical to him.
With an ultimate goal. So right now, it's been determined, I've heard numbers kind of all over the place, but I think that there's at least 100 seniors that are in need of affordable housing in the town of Wareham, and I've also heard the number 200. So I can see where this study committee would get 280. They were trying, and I appreciate the fact the committee was trying to solve a lot of the issues in Wareham with this one proposal. Given the economy, it was a great effort, but given the economy, that it's very, very difficult. But if we phasing it in maybe 6 stages is something that I hadn't considered, and if phase 1 and 2 were set up to bid, and it was 50 units per phase, within a reasonable period of time, we could have 100 units built.
It's conceivable, I would think.
Mm.
I would think so.
Interesting.
Yeah, going back to Dave's point, contractors, it's the bottom dollar. When they build phases, they have a number that once they get past their number, it's starting to go into the profit. They're making profit. They might do 35 and they're not making any money at all. They do 40 or 50, they make it. So the phases, you need to probably leave it up to the contractor. If he can do it in phases, and we mentioned it earlier, it might be 6 and he said it might be 8. But phases is the only way you're going to do it in the economy and for a contractor to make money. They're out here to make it. And
There's a break point for everybody.
for everything,
There's
even
where you
like
get a
rent,
return on investment,
right,
and that's
even
what
like
you're
renting
looking for.
units. Once they build it, if they don't rent more than 70%, they're losing money. So it's the same difference. They build it, they rent it, then they go on. So,
Mr. Chairman?
yes, go ahead.
Just
Snap.
on the issue of phasing, the other thing that has a lot to do with the number of units that get built in the phases is the fact that, the subsidy requirements dictate which, the number of units. For example, 48 to 60 units in the 202 program. Usually don't see more than that get built. So, it does have an impact. And sometimes, when you're doing a project that is combining subsidies, sometimes you need one because in some respects, they might be relying on the financing of LIHTC tax credits to support the build-out also of the Section 202 program initially. And I think typically what you'll see is a first phase project of between 48 and about 110 units. So, just to put that out there.
Mr. Holmes?
Thank you for allowing that discussion to take place, Mr. Chairman, all on one subject. I guess, I understand the phasing part, but I've also been involved with these where phase 1 begins, right? And then wasn't a good marriage, right? And we're thinking phase 2 is coming around the corner, and we find ourselves in divorce. And there's a problem. That's happened to us before. But so if we go with the phasing piece, we obviously would have to have some language in there that protects the town in case phase 1 fails with a particular developer. That we could always bring in another developer to finish it, or if they build it and they can't fill it, then they're gonna, like to Mr. Cruz's point, where they have profit margins that they need to make. And if they don't make those on the first phase, you don't see them building a second phase. So we just need to, I like that idea. I think it's the only way you're gonna, even remotely get something done there is to phase this, but we have to make sure that Rich and others have good protection in there for the town.
Mr. Snyder?
To Mr. Holmes's comment, Steve, I actually, I think that as part of the fact that this project is 100% affordable, and the fact that, you know, we're looking at a various range of incomes and the people we're trying to serve, it's different than some of the projects that have already taken place in Wareham, because a lot of them serve solely, they're in the upper portion of the low income category, like 80% of median income for rent. 80% of median income.
You saw Debbie's email. I won't use her last week. And I talked to her a couple of weeks ago. And she went, I think it was Union Pond. And she couldn't get in.
Right. That
She has a need because they said she was too wealthy.
That's-
She didn't. She had a little too much residual income there that put her over the limit. And now here's a woman who doesn't have a lot of means, but on paper she just missed the mark. And I think she went out to the other one that was just built as well. So, you know, it's almost a shame that we couldn't work with those folks who own those two and say, look, you know, we have people in need. Is there a way you can drop that down? Because she wants to stay in Wareham.
right.
And she can go to Bourne and move in there, and it meets her needs.
Right.
But why can't we do that here if it's the same type of
Okay, I
project?
think there's a
Right.
there's a misnomer when we say affordable housing. People think when we say affordable housing, it's going to get them for $400-500. That's assisted housing. When you have assisted housing altogether, the government's paying most of it. But when
That's,
you have affordable, there's only a certain percentage that's going to be. They have like Mr. Snyder said, they have a range scale. They have a range scale, and there's only so many percentages going to be in that low range scale. There's a lot of people that even can't afford the affordable housing. So to think that we're going to have affordable housing and people are going to pay all $400 or $500,
Mr. Chair,
I think the lowest is
my
about
mom was
800.
in affordable housing, 100% senior affordable housing. It was based on income.
It is.
And so if someone's making $12,000 a year, then it's based on that income. So I think it was 30%. And the particular project that she was in ended up being 3 buildings. They were high rises, and I believe they were building a 4th, but they built the first one, filled it, and went right through and have had a waiting list for years. And there's a few hundred in there. But it was 100% senior affordable housing.
All I'm saying is there's a misnomer because people think that when they go affordable housing, they're going to get $400 or $500 rent. It's based on the income that's proposed. And most of them have, as Mr. Snyder said, and most people, they have a range limit for the area that we're in. And usually the first 10% is at the low end, and then the rest of it, like you said, is based on
Mr. Chairman,
based on your income. Yes.
you're both
Snyder.
correct.
Right.
And in that there are, and this is what was great about the RFPs that came in initially for Westfield. There are those units that, you know, you can't make, you know, over a certain amount. And then there are those units that you have to make a minimum amount. And that's how we get the income mix into the developments, and that's what makes a successful development. So you're actually both right. So
All right, now,
Go-
thank you. I think the phasing approach is
So can we get back to, okay, wait
kind
up.
of put a button on it. I think that phasing approach may be more attractive.
I'd like,
Okay, Dave?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I'd like to just circle back to Mr. Holmes' comment about being married to someone and having a divorce midway through the process. I think if we're very clear in our language to the developers in the RFP and say that you're bidding on phase 1, or you're bidding on phase 1 and 2, or whatever that is, that sort of gives us a very clear line of demarcation in terms of what the marriage is going to be, to start out with.
Not only that, though, I think it protects us because if we have that kind of phased approach, and I was raised in the 70s, I can take you over there and show you that now, right?
Exactly. Right.
You know, so we can always deal with legal reasons and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
In terms of performance, in a phased approach actually protects us as taxpayers more
Right.
than a huge project setting up.
I agree.
All right, that works both ways. Mrs. Winslow?
Mr. Chair, I know that Mrs. Slavin is trying to address the SOAR issue, and my comments sort of speak to that. I don't know how many times we're going to change the RFP and send it out until we finally get a developer who thinks he can make enough money. But we're talking about now phasing a project with 50 to 100 units and investing $500,000 into infrastructure of taxpayer money. So not only are we giving them the land, we're only asking them to build what's really doesn't put a dent in the problem if that list is at 200. Although I do think the Director of Housing Authority said it was 100. But I'm sure over the 2 years since this thing, has gone on, it's increased. Plus $500,000 for SOAR. I mean, I don't know, should we buy them the building materials too? What's it going to take for these people to come in here and build this project? Because I really feel that we also have a responsibility to protect the interests of the taxpayer. And building this project at any cost just to build it is not responsible. And Mrs. Slavin does have some information on the SOAR, and I'd like to hear her address that and what it really means in terms of how that impacts this project.
Because let me just follow you. We're moving on to sewer financial contribution first.
Yes.
In the 2009 RFP, let me read you something that contradicted itself in the document, which is why we made the change.
Sandy, we're on sewer?
Yes, I'm on,
Can you give us a page number?
I'm on the 2009 copy, which you probably don't have the 2009 original RFP. Let me read it to you.
I'm looking at the RFP that we just put out.
No, that we changed,
Okay,
okay,
it's
the,
Article 2, towns, water and sewer.
no, not there. We changed it. In the 2009, let me read what it says. As noted in Section 6, the Board of Selectmen will recommend to the town meeting that a contribution of $500,000 be made to the project to pay for a portion of the cost to connect to water and sewer. I'm going to now face Section 6, and it says under to support the goals of the project, the BOS will propose to the Community Preservation for approval at the town meeting a financial community to the project of a minimum $200,000, depending on the strength of the project, as high as $500,000. That was a contradiction. In one section, you'll give them $500 for sewer. In another section, you'll give them a range from $200 to $500. Because of that contradiction, we changed it so in this recent RFP, on page 5, nope,
5,
nope. On page 9, section 7, town financial contribution to the project. The goals, to support the goals of the project, the BOS will support the developer's proposal to the Community Preservation Committee for approval by town meeting of a financial contribution to the project in a range of $200,000 to $500,000. We kept it at a maximum of $500,000. We didn't specify any particular use to it. Well, in the 2009, they guaranteed they said $500,000 for sewer, and then in another section said a range from $200,000 to $500,000. And to me, that was a contradiction, and we needed to clear that up, which is why we made the change that you see here.
But to be clear, there is no financial contribution. When this RFP goes out, there is no financial
No,
contribution
it is,
by the town.
the Board of Selectmen would support to the town meeting,
and
support, a potential, no guarantee. Now I want to go back to the sewer, please.
So are you saying that
I just wanted to clarify that we're still in this article, that there is a potential of $500,000 available to the contractor if approved by town meeting.
right?
I had heard other numbers that we took it out, but we didn't, we just put it in just clarified it.
Are you trying to, so I was just trying to understand your point. Are you trying to say that we should make that clear that there is? Should we?
No, it's there. There was a comment, I thought Mike said, Mr. Snyder said earlier that there was some issue with withholding, reducing our CPC fund contribution. I think Joe said 300,000. So I just wanted to make it clear that we're still in this RFP, the potential of 500,000 to assist in the project. That's all. Okay.
Yeah,
Now,
Sandy, just to clarify on that, I think what I was trying to get at was it was made ambiguous as to what it could be used for versus designating it as going towards the water and sewer.
yeah, in one section it said water and sewer. Section 6, it didn't specify the purpose for the project. But when it talked about it in water and sewer, it talked about 500,000 for it,
I
as opposed
understand.
to the range later on. And because of the contradiction, we had to clear it up.
Right.
Okay. Now, on sewer, I'm looking on page 5, under town water and sewer, subsection 4. The
Must be deleted, right. I had that circled. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, what it is, what I'm concerned about is that when we originally sent this RFP to the town for distribution, it was on there. And then on a, 8:25 meeting, Susan Green, Mark Andrews, Derek Sullivan, and Peter Sandborg came before the RFP group and asked us to take a look at 11 changes to the RFP. Number 1 was to remove that nitrogen net zero document. And we approved it. We voted 4-0-0 to remove it. But I'm looking at this latest RFP that went out. It's still in it. I was quite surprised to find it there because we had approved to remove it. So to me, if I am a developer and I have a choice, if I have a choice between putting up a sewer line all the way down the street or having a net zero, I'm not going to like this project.
Mr. Sambo?
May I make some clarification on that? What we have is the full RFP. There were 2 or 3 addendas that were sent out to all the developers that this was distributed to, and that removal of the nitrogen provision was contained in one of those addendum.
So
So
what-
it was,
Page
it
5.
was communicated to them
So the
that this
copy-
has been deleted.
So the
Page
copy
5,
we were
item
given
4 is
today-
deleted,
So the
correct?
copy we were given today as the latest RFP is not the right one?
Mr. Chairman, if I could,
Oh.
from that meeting, we did have an addenda, and there were other questions that were raised by developers that had emailed the offices, and I apologize for not having the addenda today. But I do recall that meeting, if I could, through you, Mr. Chairman, and we had talked about just about everything we talked about today. Phasing the development because the number of units, Peter, correct me if I'm wrong here, were too high. We had also looked at the sewer issue, because I know the Springborn pump station is under review as we speak for other types of development, and I think that's a positive indicator going forward. Peter, help me out here. There were other items that I think we presented to the committee that could perhaps, we were trying to streamline it to get out in front of some of these issues sooner rather than later. Peter?
Yeah, there were several. I don't think they were
Yeah.
necessarily critical in terms of interest, but we thought they were, given the constraints of the town meeting vote, I think they were the things that we felt that we could do that were still consistent with what the town meeting vote was. The RFP, and just if I can clarify for Sandy through you, Mr. Chairman, again, this is the RFP that was sent out, but this does not include the addenda that were sent out to the developers after the RFP. So, but this is what was sent out. For example, other things, the RFP calls for, with the submission of a proposal, preliminary design plans, preliminary engineering, which if you took literally would be a substantial cost for a developer to incur. So we changed the preliminary to concept.
Yep.
To reduce the upfront financial risk. And so we looked at ways that could sort of streamline this, simplify it, consistent with the town meeting vote.
Yes, there were 11 topics on that proposal. I saw nothing in here to reduce the number of units. I mean, example, consider modifying the terms of a local preference to a target of 70% subject to approval of DHCD or other financial agencies. Changing the word preliminary to conceptual. Deleting the reference to preliminary engineering plans. Some of these things, to me, were not substantial in what we're looking for, but clarifying some points in which might be an issue with a developer. There was a request here to consider deleting the requirement for construction and maintenance of a new on-site soccer and football field, and we chose not to remove that, but we did choose to remove the nitrogen net zero. Just about everything else on this list of 11 topics were considered and accepted, approved by the RFP group.
And all of those that were, and there were a couple of things
Yeah.
that we needed to confer with town council on, all of those that were considered and adopted by the group were clarified through addenda.
The other section on this sewer, I'm going to read a section. It's really verbatim from what it was in 2009 to this latest one. Sewer commissioners have determined in the past that the town has adequate water capacity and sewer capacity to support similar projects. The town will need to evaluate the current capacity of the sewer in Toby Road and Springboard pumping stations. I don't know if that's going to say somebody saying, I'm not sure I want to put in a sewer when I'm not sure it would be accepted by the sewer commissioners, or am I reading that wrong? To me, that wasn't a guarantee that we could hook up to sewer. The project could hook up to sewer.
We have to check with CDM to make sure we get all the information we
Mr. Chair.
need back on that, so.
I
Yes,
have
Mr. Begley?
I have a question regarding the addendums that went out. Well, first of all, I think having a clean RFP go out would be better than this one out, and then do you have the addendums, et cetera, et cetera. And any addendums that go out, did all of those addendums come before this board? I think they need to, because I would have chosen to take off the new soccer field and the new baseball field. I would have chosen to do that, because having the refurbishment, the rehab of the current fields is what's in the article. So I would prefer that any addendums or any changes come before this board. And I think that, well, I'll make a motion. Okay, you're right. I move that any and all addendums to the Westfield request for proposals.
How many have there been? I only have 3.
Doesn't matter
Okay, so let me start again. I make a motion that any addendums to the request for proposals for the Westfield Senior Affordable Housing Project are submitted to and approved by the Board of Selectmen.
A second.
Motion made and second. Any other questions? Only other question I'm going to make is, right, well, this question time, right. I'm going to bring a question up, is we must approve the first RFP that went out. So the RFP went out, and then there was changes after. So if there is changes, normally there's going to be an addendum going out, even if it comes before us. So, like you're saying, to hold it until it goes out, a lot of times there's going to be an addendum coming out.
Mr. Chair, the addendums didn't come before us.
Right, I know. So from now on, it'll be, but I'm just going to say, even if we did, it went out as we seen it. We didn't see it after, so.
And that's a problem, because our name's on it.
Right.
We need to see what the proposal is for, right? The changes, that's what she's asking.
Motion made by Ellen, second by Steve. All in favor?
Aye.
4-0.
Mr. Chair, if we're going through this page by page, I probably, we're going to need a whole lot more time.
I think, yeah, well, we're on a time constraint right now, so we need to,
But I would like to know, because they're not in here, if there are 11 addendums, or could there not, how many, 3? How many
Well,
changes
there-
to this?
I believe it was addendum 3. I apologize, I don't have the whole file with me this morning, but I think it was addendum 3 that addressed the multiple issues that.
Well, but I don't have those to write in on mine.
Right.
Is that correct?
I don't know what,
I don't know what you have.
I
don't know what you have in front of you.
I have an RFP that, I don't know what date it went out.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Through you to Selectman Holmes. Steve, I thought I distinctly recall us dating the RFP that we reviewed. Didn't we date it?
Well, this particular document on page 3 says proposals due by September 9th, 2011 at 10 a.m. So I don't know what changes were made in the document that I have in my possession.
Yeah, there's no date on
Yeah.
this one.
Okay.
I'm looking
Some
at-
of the addendum related exclusive, there was addendum that extended the response time period.
Right?
Then there was an addendum that
To extend it
rescinded
again.
that. Then there was
Correct.
another addendum issued that extended it again. And
We voted on those.
Right.
extensions.
yes,
Right.
yes,
I think what Mrs. Begley's talking about, though, is the ingredients were changed.
yes.
What ingredients were changed other than the timeline?
I don't have it. We don't, I only have 3 addendums here, and they all have to do with dates.
But you just said that you guys had voted to, like, remove the nitrogen net zero bylaw item.
By that time, the RFP was in the town administrator's hands.
But
Okay.
Peter, didn't you just say that there was an addendum to that removed the net nitrogen
Yes,
zero?
Yeah.
there was.
So, there's more than 3. There were 3 date changes.
And
this
that-
net-
Mr. Chairman?
Where's the document that says that was removed? I'm sorry.
Right now, Steve had recommended earlier, it's going to go back to the committee. So this is null and void now, as far as I can see. It needs to go back to the committee. We're going to go over everything that we discussed right now. And the committee needs to bring it back to us in full relationship to whatever's going to transpire.
Mr.
Yes.
Chairman?
Mr. Cruz, I think that if it's gonna come back to the committee, first of all, we need to have all the documents so that we can review
And
everything.
direction.
As you're suggesting, you don't have everything, we don't have everything either. So in order for us to review it, we need to have all the documents. So whoever the keeper of the documents is now, we would expect to have a full set of documents.
Right. Because
Yeah.
right now, it's all piecemeal. You know, you have some, we have some.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Mr. Chairman.
But I'd like to, Mr. Chair, is there any way that we can delete, because I it's just not going to happen, this is something that we've all agreed on, the 40B, the 40B number is a moving target. It's always going to be a moving target. So my question is this, on page 5, on item 4, removing status of achieving 40B goals.
Sorry, page 5?
Page 5 of my document,
Section 4.
section 4.
Section 4.
So I'm just gonna summarize what I've been hearing, is that we're going to.
Could I just get an answer to this question first, Sandy? I
Oh,
understand.
okay.
All that is our status. It's
Yeah,
not
So it's just a status. It's, well, my concern is this, that I just don't, everybody keeps saying that this is to
That's-
to
this
settle
is
the
just
40B
status
interest.
of our current.
It's quite remarkable. I'm encouraged that we're still having a positive and constructive conversation about this project, because given that this was proposed 10 years ago, and when you think about the change in the economy since that time, it's quite extraordinary. Because 10 years ago, we would have asked for the moon, and probably gotten it. And it was a different economy 10 years ago, that's for sure.
Yeah, this isn't asking the project to achieve 40B. This just tells us, and this was at the end when we finally got our census numbers, and we put that in. I wanted to get back to, I don't think we ever finished the question on the money. I understand that you're pointing out a contradiction on the way that's stated But actually, the town financial contribution at the time of this RFP is zero. Zero. So, if I was a developer, and I'm not, and I looked at this and I said, boy, you know what? I could bid on this Wareham project, and I can get between 200 and 500 grand. But the fact of the matter is, when they're reading this RFP, there is $0.
So would
Yeah,
you
no,
prefer
this
to
is
take it
talking
out?
about to support the goals, CPC money, between 200 and 500, when in fact, all that says is the Board of Selectmen would support. The Board of Selectmen don't even have a vote. I mean, other than individual members as citizens.
Yep.
We have no control over an article at town
Would you
meeting,
prefer that it be removed?
other than to put it on town meeting. That's the only thing we can do.
Would you prefer that we remove it or rewrite it?
Well, I think it's deceiving. If somebody came in and they, I mean, we could always go back and say, hey, we didn't tell you we were going to give you that money. We only said we were going to support an article.
Mr. Chairman, Steve, I actually would disagree. I don't think it's deceiving at all. I think it's common practice, particularly, when you're doing transactions with nonprofits. Part of what it is, they're looking for some reassurance that we as a board are going to support this project going forward, and that's really, I think, what the intent of having that paragraph in there is.
Yeah,
And
I-
you're right,
I
there is no
understand.
guarantee.
My question was going to be next was, is the board comfortable with really putting skin in the game and just talking about it? And my question would be, why don't we, since we just announced a meeting for town dates for town meeting, bring that back, turn it around, why don't we put together an article that says, to the successful bidder of Westfield, the town would vote to appropriate between 200 and 500,000, and subject to, of course, all the approvals of the leasing and all that kind of stuff. If it never happens, there's no harm, no foul. But then that would actually tell a contractor, a developer, that hey, the town has put the skin in the game of 400 grand. Let's just use that number, and have the money voted on, approved, and sit there and wait.
Mr. Chairman? Steve, I think that's a fantastic idea if we're going to move forward with it unilaterally, because it does, and it also sends a very clear message that, hey, the Board of Selectmen does support this, and we're
The
already,
town as well.
right, and we're going to town meeting, we're bringing this to town meeting to, so we can give you an assurance that this is going to happen. And, I think we are putting skin in the game, but it's an investment for us, because we're going to see a return in a revenue stream from water and sewer. It's going to benefit both the water department and the town. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, because my point is, we're talking about it, but if we actually have the money, and we've notified CPC, and we have the warrant article done, I mean, we haven't spent any money, but we've reserved that money for the project if it comes to.
I think it's great idea, Steve.
And then it's not just a number, it's actual skin in the game.
This is as a member of CPC.
I was going to go there next.
As the member of CPC, we are beyond our deadline for submitting grant requests for the April town meeting. You can
We
do it for
drafted
the
for the
fall town
meeting.
meeting,
Right.
if we have funds.
We're not asking them to spend the money.
No, you're asking the money, you're asking them not to encumber it?
I'm just saying that.
No, I'm asking, would your article ask that we encumbered the money and set it aside and not use it for anything else? Is that your intent with this article?
I was thinking more of a rolling target that once this project is approved, at such time, the town would.
So you're asking, so encumber it. I would have to set it aside and not use it for anything else.
Well, I think as long as the CPC committee planned on that number at a certain amount of time, you wouldn't have to take that 400,000 today, put it in a separate account, because this isn't being built tomorrow.
I'd still have to have it to put it aside.
Mr.
There would
Chairman?
have to be a method.
Yeah.
Mr.
I'm sorry, back and forth, I know.
Okay, I think Mrs. Winslow. Yeah, I think, Mrs. Winslow, yeah, you have it.
Mr. Chair, I mean, if the Board of Selectmen is looking to go back and put the bid back, the RFP back out, and we know what we want, why are we tying up these people any further? Why don't we write it?
Why don't we what?
Why don't we write it? I mean, I personally, and I've said this before, I think we're way too focused on this one project. It's, you know, years go by and the issue's not being addressed, but, you know, majority rules. So if we think we know what we want, why don't we write it? We're getting a new CEDAR director on board in the next few months. Mr. Sanborn is very skilled gentleman. I mean, we tasked these people, we met with them, we attended their meetings, we had somebody here every week. I mean, why don't we just do it ourselves if we know what we want?
Isn't that what we're doing?
Well, no, we're telling them what we want them to do.
It does say that it goes to review a recommended committee, and they are the committee. it
And
goes back to
they,
us.
and
So right now, it isn't completed. We're looking at it and it isn't completed, so it needs to go back to them and let them complete.
well, Mr. Chair, I would beg to differ with you that it isn't completed. The RFP was completed, it was put out to bid, we did 2 time extensions, we've invited contractors twice to come and meet with us when there was no response. I do think that a great deal of effort has been put in to this by both the committee, the Board of Selectmen, the CEDA director, and the town administrator. So I don't consider it to be incomplete. I consider it to be complete. Now we want to go back and make changes based on what we think will entice a developer, even though we don't have any sitting before us because none of them cared to take the time to spend, which speaks volumes to me. So I'm just wondering why we're sending it back again when all we really need to do is take that original RFP and put in what the town meeting warrant said.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Baker.
Although there isn't a quorum here, and I certainly appreciate you taking your Saturday morning, I really appreciate the input from these people. And you certainly speak up if you want to see this through and continue on this project. I know you can only speak for yourselves, and since it's not a quorum, you know, I don't want to be disrespectful and negate your work. But I also want to, I value your input. So I just wonder how each member feels about pursuing this on the Westfield Committee. If you choose to respond.
I'll respond. I'll respond as myself because we don't have a quorum here. But we have put a lot of time and effort into the process. I think that, with all due respect to your comments just now, I think that there's been a lot of give and take here, and we've come up with some ideas that, quite frankly, the selectmen didn't have or didn't vocalize. And we have a dichotomy of people on our board, our committee, that works very well together, and we have people with different levels of experience, come from different walks of life, that all have been able to contribute dramatically to the process that we've gone through thus far. And I'll speak again for myself and say that I'd like to see it through. I signed on to help the selectmen and the town of Wareham bring this to fruition, so I'm in it for the long haul, not the short haul. If you don't want us to participate, that's certainly your prerogative.
I think that's a good idea. Well, with the suggestions that have been made since we've been talking, I think it is a good idea to have it go back. Mr. Holmes?
I think that I don't want those comments from my colleague to be misconstrued. I think it's more of a patience issue than anything. And my issue has been right from the start of this. Oh, and by the way, while we're on that subject, folks in the office, please remember Westfield Study goes on every agenda until it's built. I was missing last week. What I would say is we've made a number of category discussions today on this. And I'd like to give Mr. Heaney and his team the opportunity to go through this, and we can get these edited. And I would like to see the 7 folks look at this. But Bill, my issue is timeline right from day one. So, you know, today is the 14th? 14th. And do we need another session on this, or you think the major mess in the Board of Selectmen?
I think it should go back to the committee with some of the recommendations we made, and if they need any more comments, like you said, to come back and we can inject whatever we need to do to keep it moving.
Before, sorry, there were two other substantial changes in this RFP from 2009, and I'd like to know if the board can comment on those two changes so we know how to address them. I'll just highlight them. One, we wanted a community garden. This time we added water system and a shed to the community garden from the 2009 version. And we expanded
What
this-
page? Excuse me.
I don't have a page from 2009.
What about
Oh.
from 2011?
Well, I only pulled the 2009 to the 11. I'd have to go find it. Sorry, section 6, letter R.
Which page is that, Mrs. Beck?
No, section 5.
Oh, yeah, we deleted a section. R.
Mr. Chair, Sandy, did it just say public garden or public,
It was,
the original one?
It-
Was it this specific saying that at least 1,000 square feet, have on-site water source, have a tool shed for storage of gardening implements and nearby parking?
I can,
find it, I'll find it, I'll find it.
I can tell you from my standpoint, I think that this was a very constructive idea from the Westfield Study Committee. I don't think that this is a deal breaker.
Okay.
No, not
And
at all.
the other thing that we modified from the original one was the size of the community building and the equipment inside of it. It included things like a television, a kitchen, and whatever. But other than that, everything else that changed between 2009 and this one has already been discussed here today, but those were two other changes that were made, and I just wanted comments back on.
Mr. Chair,
Yes. Mrs. Elizabeth?
I think that Mr. Heaney, during one of our earliest meetings, had been very clear that things like the community building needed to be very specific about the expectations in the bid, and that was one of the reasons why we chose gentlemen like Mr. Mulkern, who has vast construction knowledge, and Mr. I'm sorry,
Nielsen?
Nielsen, and Mr. Heaney, who worked, to really look at these things and figure out, how big does it need to be for this number of people? What, so that we didn't end up with an empty building that was just called a community building. So I do think that, and I don't think that the purchase of a TV or, appliances in a project like this is, amounts to a whole hill of beans of dollars.
Granted, but I just wanted people to realize what we had changed from 09 to 11, and it wasn't just what we had discussed earlier.
Right, but I do think we went through that at length during one of those first meetings that we had.
And when we go back to the board, we gotta realize that we're gonna do this in phases and not as one big project, because when you get to 280, you may have community garden and all this other thing, but when the contractor's only doing 50, is he gonna do extra that's not gonna, like we said, it's the bottom dollar, so we gotta keep in mind that we are doing it in phases.
I think Mr. Chairman, I think that's a very good point. I think it's the question of timing. I think that's another very constructive thing that developed as a result of the Westfield Study Committee. And I think that, that's actually going to be a requirement in some respects, there's funding available through the subsidy program to actually develop that type of building and facility. And sometimes, to even staff it with a part-time resident social services coordinator. So I think it's great.
Mr. Sanborn?
Yeah, I'm somewhat reluctant to bring this up, but I think I'd be remiss if I didn't. Obviously, I came late to this game. I don't have the benefit of the history of the discussion of town meeting and everything else that preceded my involvement in late 2011. But I guess I would be remiss if I didn't ask the Board of Selectmen and the committee, if there was any way that you would give serious consideration to taking this back to town meeting in the spring, basically with stripping, with a proposal to strip this down to the bare essentials to achieve what you want to do. And that would be to remove the requirement on the recreational facilities, as well as the requirement that it be 100% affordable. I think for the latter point about it being 100% affordable, if there was some ability for them to have a mixed income development there, then by having some market rate units in this, you give a greater feasibility to having other units be truly affordable to the very low income seniors through some skewing by some internal subsidies, with a clear statement of a minimum percent or minimum number of units that you would want to have as affordable units. As a rental development, as long as you met the minimum, all of those rental units would still count for your 40B.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Sanborn, you just spoke what's been going through my mind for many weeks now on this subject, and that is that we did see in the emails that we received that there does seem to be a real issue with the ball fields, whether it's, you know, anything to do with the ball fields. But the other thing is that we did receive an email from a nice citizen who expressed their frustration over not being able to get into these affordable places because of their income, but needing a safe environment to be in. So having some market rate units in there may not be a bad idea. It may, and you know, it may actually make the project a little bit more palatable to myself, because it solves a bit bigger piece of the problem, and that is, where are the seniors who can't keep their homes anymore, not because they can't afford them, but because they can't keep up with them any longer? Where are they going to go? And I do think that that would make it far more attractive to any developer, because that's really where they're making their money, is on the market rate rentals, unless they can find, you know, an enormous amount of subsidy or be very creative with their financing. And, you know, the other thing that we have to take into consideration is that we are in an election year. You know, there's going to be an election in November, and these types of things change dramatically can change dramatically in those situations. We've already seen big cuts to these types of programs, and I would hope that, you know, the next, if we continue on with our current president or the new one, we'll finally see the light that these things are important to society as a whole. So I rather like that idea. I mean, I do think that we need to be upfront with the people and the citizens of the community about what we can reasonably expect.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I think that, Peter, you weren't here for the many, many times that this was discussed at town meeting. And when this article passed, it was, I keep hearing people want to keep bringing up debate and the attention to the article. There was intense debate to support senior affordable housing. In fact, there was an amendment made to this article to add the word senior affordable housing. So we are charged right now with bringing this article that was passed at town meeting to fruition. So what happens in November may very well impact this project, but this project needs to go forward as the article that was passed at town meeting is written. So this is the project that we need to address, and this is what's going back to the current article, is going back to the current Westfield Study Committee, if they'll have it. Now, Mr. Chair, if I could, because we have another meeting at 10:30, I'd asked earlier to read this letter into the record and have it attached in the minutes. This is to the Board of Selectmen from Bruce Savageau, a member of the Westfield RFP Study and Recommendation Committee. And the subject matter is recommendation and opinion. wish to apologize to both the board and committee for not being able to attend today's very important meeting concerning the future direction of the Westfield project. I am currently out of the country on vacation, but wanted to provide input to this discussion in the form of this letter, which I request to be read into the record and attached to the minutes. To begin, I would reference the letter Mr. Schneider read into the record at a previous Board of Selectmen's meeting written by one of the 5 former respondents to the original Westfield RFP. I would encourage the Board of Selectmen to use this letter as a template for today's discussion. In that letter, the developer gave an analysis of what he perceived to be the current critical flaws to the RFP as amended by the committee. He identified 4 primary concerns. He suggested the scope of the project was probably largely too large to develop at one time, and suggested phasing the project into manageable components. I would suggest 50 to 75 units per phase until completed. Secondly, the CPA committee was mentioned as a potential source of contention. This was probably based on the fact that $500,000 originally mentioned as a CPC source of funding for sewer construction was deleted from the current RFP. This should be added back into the document as a commitment by the Board of Selectmen to apply for funding as a Board of Selectmen warrant article. Thirdly, I think we
Excuse
just...
me, 'cause she finished the letter right, thank you.
Thirdly, the addition of 2 new playing fields to the existing 2 ball fields was identified as a cost prohibitive to the project and should be removed from the RFP as a means to make the project financially viable. This was suggested by the current interim CETA director in his review of Westfield, but was declined by the committee at that time, citing the language of the town meeting warrant article as requiring it. However, an argument can be made that a plain reading of the article makes no such demand, but merely requires maintenance of the existing fields. Therefore, the language of the RFP should be amended to remove the requirement of 2 new fields, which I believe is within the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen as the sole RFP authority. Finally, the letter identified the current political environment as a major concern to the developer. I believe this can be interpreted to mean the fractured support of this project by the current Board of Selectmen. The former consultant on this project repeatedly told the Board of Selectmen that the unanimous Board of Selectmen vote in support of the project was extremely important to the developer community because it gave them real confidence in their own commitment. I would urge the 2 current selectmen who have consistently opposed Westfield by their votes to reconsider their position at least during this very critical stage. There will be ample opportunity at the bargaining table to make your points of concern and shape the project as you see fit. All that I would add personally to this discussion as a suggestion to the Board of Selectmen is that a professional consultant should be hired to advise both the committee and selectmen during all phases of this project. Either a fund transfer request can be made by the town administrator at the direction of the Board of Selectmen to the FinCom, or a formal CPA funding request at the next town meeting could be made by the Board of Selectmen to the CPC. When we used such professional guidance in the past, we drew 5 competent bids. We should make every effort to ensure the success and viability of this project as charged by the town meeting voters, and a consultant would go a long way in meeting that objective. I thank the Selectmen and the committee for listening and wish all good luck in this ongoing endeavor. Most respectfully, Bruce.
Okay. You can
Mr. Chair.
hand that to the clerk, and we'll have it in a minute.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just for the record, 2 things. First of all, the CPC money was not deleted from the RFP. It was in there that we would support a $200,000 to $500,000 contribution. And the second thing is that while my colleague read 1 letter, there were actually 5 responses, and the other responses were not nearly as scathing as those. So I would like to request that all 5 responses be made available to the public through the website so the public can see what the other 4 developers had to say.
That sounds fair.
Thank you.
Okay, our time is running out. We're going to send this back to the committee and continue working on it with the recommendations that were heard here. I don't think do we need anything in writing, or you have it written down? And just to make sure that we get all the addendums that, right, okay.
Can I just ask that we have all correspondence? We've talked about addendums, but to her comment, I think we should have all correspondence.
Yes, right,
Both,
okay.
to
At our
both the
disposal.
Westfield Study Committee and the Board of Selectmen.
And the
Yeah,
Board of
exactly.
Selectmen, correct. And then just let us know, maybe one of us will attend one of your meetings, just in case, or a couple of us. Well, it'll be on our agenda every week, so when you do have something. Well, I think it's constructive and we're heading in the right direction because with the phase out, I think it'll work a lot easier and better.
Just one final
Yes,
question
go ahead.
from the committee. I think what we'd like to get a better understanding of would be your requirements for our commitment, for time commitment in terms of when you'd like to have this back in your hands. We need some guideline.
You know, Dave, since you've been working with the committee and you know the time frame that you guys have been working on, what do you recommend instead of us trying to put a time frame on you? Because we want to do it right this time. In other words, don't rush and we're going to bosh it.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, because this
Yes.
is the comment I wanted to make, because it could affect the time. It's the reference to the capacity of the sewer on Toby Road and the pumping station. I think that's an issue that there should be an answer to before this gets reissued here. So I don't know what that involves in terms of doing that. But
Mr. Chair, two weeks from this upcoming Tuesday would be January 31st. So it's not an unreasonable expectation that the documents be given to both the Board of Selectmen and the Westfield RFP Committee, and that Mr. Heaney schedule a meeting between now and the 31st.
Okay, we'll have to have a letter going out to him on that. That'll be fine. What is, Dave?
I think that's certainly acceptable. I think what we'd like to do is probably reconvene, have a meeting, determine where we're at, and then let us decide at that point how long we feel it's going to take to come
Right.
back to you with a final response.
Awesome.
Right. Do I have any other comments?
So what we would do is produce a document highlighting the changes that were discussed here, and that we all agree that these are the changes that were to be considered. Correct? Typed into what document? You would type it, you would have it typed, or we? So, I'm sorry, who would control the master version of this RFP?
Susan Green?
So it would come back to the RFP committee to make modifications?
So, yeah.
Do you have other changes listed or no? Right.
Well, on, Mr. Cruz, would that, I mean, if we approve, it, well, it's tight, but I'm just
Right.
saying there's going to be minutes to this meeting that would be simple enough to send them the minutes of the meeting.
Right, because it's being taped, so they can...
Right, so once we can approve the meeting, the minutes, if they're prepared by Tuesday evening, if they kind of put the other minutes off and we approve these minutes, then they can, once they're approved, they can just go,
Yeah,
or the
what-
draft minutes could go.
Okay, so we're going to continue. Oh, everybody's in consensus. Okay. And thank you for coming. I think we...
Thank you very much.
Yep, and we made some headway, so that's good. Motion made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed?